going to talk about, I guess, a little bit about current events in a way, but it's also about ancient things also. As we're all aware, there's a war going on in the Middle East, and we're heavily involved in it. And so is a little country Israel, or I just kind of call them Judah because kind of what they are, the remnant part of Judah. But, you know, they call themselves Israel, so that's good enough for me. And it's like an ancient family feud in a way. Ancient enemies, you know, Persia, Iran, Persia, and of course many of the other Arab countries. And this kind of thing's been going on since ancient times. And it's just one of them things that, like a family feud, you can hardly end it. In a question I asked, I guess myself or anybody else, can America bring peace to the Middle East? And when we look at it, our military has done wonders, you know, and our leaders, as far as prosecuting the war and making progress that way. But peace, I think, we probably all know, whatever peace comes out of this will be temporary. But at least somebody had to do something, I guess. And another question I ask is, why does America and Great Britain, of course, Great Britain's not Great Britain anymore, it's a little less than that, but, you know, for a long time it was Great Britain. Why do we have ties to and are concerned with a little country called Israel so much? And why do we share belief in the same God and the same holy book, you know, Judeo-Christianity? So maybe by reading a little bit here, we can kind of answer some of these questions, see what the ties are and what the implications are. So let's turn to Genesis 15. It goes way back in Genesis 15. And I think I'll start in verse 2. Well, just start in verse 1, I guess. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. So here's God speaking to Abraham. He said, do not be afraid. Well, it's Abram at that time. He was not yet Abraham, Abram. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eleazar of Damascus? So, you know, he's concerned he has no children. You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Verse 4, then the word of the Lord came to him, this man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. It's quite a thing, you know, because now we kind of got a little bit of an inkling how vast a promise that was, you know, the stars in the heavens. It's in the billions, especially in the millions, you know, probably in our own galaxy. But it was quite a promise. And just as a side note, Judah, in whatever form it is, has never fulfilled this. They've never been, you know, tens of millions. But it's just a side note. And of course, this was a prophecy to Israel because, you know, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the 12 sons. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited to him as righteousness. And we'll skip down to, I guess, verse 12. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep. Here he'd asked, God had told him to prepare a sacrifice. And then the Lord said to him, know for certain that 400 years. Well, yeah, he was preparing a sacrifice, I guess, to seal, to dedicate, seal the covenant. And then he goes on to tell him, the Lord said to him, know for certain that in 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, that they will be enslaved and mistreated there, which we know too. We won't turn there and read, but we know that in a time of famine, Jacob's family, which I think they numbered about 70 people, because of famine they had to go to Egypt to survive and to get food, and they went into Egypt as about 70 people. They were there 400 years. They went in as guests, but things changed, and they ended up being servants. But when they came out, there were probably around 2 million people. So he's telling them that your people will be enslaved for a time, but I will punish the nation they serve as slaves. And then he said, you, however, Abram, you will go to your ancestors in peace, in other words, and be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached full measure. So he's telling him, your descendants will possess this land, but not for at least 400 years. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking fire pit with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the offerings, on the pieces. And he says, on that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, to your descendants I give this land. And this here is very interesting, and most people, I think, don't realize it. When we think of Israel, we see a tiny sliver of a little country over there. Just the tiniest little place. But that's not the entirety of what God gave him. He said, I will give this land from the river of Egypt, which is the Nile River, to the great river, the Euphrates. And that's over 900 miles from the Nile River over to the Euphrates, which is where you'll find modern-day Iraq and Iran as well. That's over 900 miles. That's how big that land is. And Israel has never possessed it fully. It says it's the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and Jebusites. So he's given them quite a land there, quite a promise. And it's never been completely fulfilled to this day. And of course, that sacrifice there that he talked about was the covenant he made. So let's now turn to chapter 48, rather. Chapter 48 in Genesis 48. I haven't got it broke in. Like Stan, the pages still stick together. Okay, chapter 48, verse 1. Here it's talking about much later when Jacob is about to die. He's old and he's getting ready to die, and he knows it. And he's wanting to bless his sons. Well, his favorite son, by his favorite wife, Joseph, was taken into Egypt years before this. And he was married and he had 2 sons. And of course, I expect they were the apple of Jacob's eye, those grandsons. Anyway, verse 1, sometime later Joseph was told, your father is ill. And Joseph had become great in Egypt. He was second only under the Pharaoh. And so the family of Jacob was getting very good treatment in the land. Joseph was told, your father is ill, so he took his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, along with him. And of course, Jacob wanted to bless these sons. Verse 5 says, Now then, your two sons, born to you in Egypt, before I came to you here, will be reckoned as mine. So he's adopting these sons. They will be reckoned as mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine. So he's adopting the sons. And you going over them, we'll skip down, I guess, to verse 11. And Israel said, and his name was no longer Jacob at that time. It had been changed to Israel. So when he named his name on those sons, he was actually naming the name Israel. Israel said to Joseph, I've never expected to see your face again, and now God has allowed me to see your children also. Then Joseph removed them from Israel's knees and bowed down with his face to the ground, and Joseph took them, Ephraim on his right, and Ishmael left hand, and Manasseh on his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them close to him. But Israel reached out his right hand and put it on Ephraim's head, though he was the younger. So he should have got Manasseh should have got the major blessing, but he didn't for some reason. Ephraim did. And he put his left hand on Manasseh's head, even though Manasseh was firstborn. Then he blessed Joseph and said, May the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked faithfully, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they be called by my name. So they were to be called by Israel. And afterwards, when Israel broke into two nations and the 10 tribes went to the north and became a nation, the other 2 tribes stayed where they were and became Judah. The northern tribe was always called Israel because Manasseh and Ephraim were there. May they be called by my name and the names of my father Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly on the earth. And you know, when he called for his descendants to be like the stars in the heavens, it's just amazing. And he was speaking of Israel at that time. Of course, Abraham has many more descendants. The Arabs, you know, Ishmael was his son by his Hagar's slave wife, and became the ancestor of the Arabs. So he's got so many descendants in that part of the world, and not just Israel, but Arabs too. And it's why I say this is kind of like a family feud. And some time back, under the Trump administration, they tried to bring about a treaty over there, and it succeeded to a lot, and they called it the Abraham Accords. And that's one way of uniting all the people. You know, the Arabs, they father Abraham. You know, they I don't say they worship him, but they know he's their ancestor. So that's, you know, that's kind of what we're dealing with over there. It's like a giant family feud, and who knows how it's going to turn out right now. I think it looks like we will probably gain peace for a while, but it'll be temporary. And one more scripture I'd like to go to and read that talks about peace on a long-term basis, and that's Isaiah 11. There's many you could go to, but this is just one, and I particularly like it. And here it's talking about a future time. It's talking about a time in our future when Christ will establish a 1,000-year reign on the earth. And anyway, it's talking about Christ becoming the ruler of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. That's last part of verse 4. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. So finally the wicked is going to be banished from the earth. Verse 6, the wolf will live with the lamb. So here we're going to see even the nature of animals are going to be changed. No longer will you have prey animals. No longer will you have animals killing one another. No longer will people be learning war or killing one another. The leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. Verse 8, the infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put his hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. What a contrast, because right now the earth is not filled with the knowledge of the Lord. It's filled with every kind of deceit, wickedness, and perversion that there is. But here it's talking about a time in Christ's reign when the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord. Goes on to say, as the waters cover the sea. That's quite a statement. The earth will be full of God's righteousness and knowledge. In that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a banner. And of course, that's Christ, the root of Jesse. Jesse was David's father. Christ will inherit David's throne. And the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the people. The nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious. And in that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of his people. From Assyria, from Lower Egypt, from Cush, from Elam, and Babylonia, and all over the world. And he will gather the exiles of Israel, and he will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth. And verse 13, it says, Ephraim's jealousy will vanish, and Judah's enemies will be destroyed. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, nor Judah hostile toward Ephraim. So there will be peace. Israel will be a united nation again, and peace there. Here's the part that intrigues me. Like we saying, will we be able to establish peace in the earth or in the Middle East? Maybe, but only temporary, because it says they will, when they're reunited to that area that they were always supposed to inherit, they will swoop down on the slopes of Philistia to the west, and that's where you find the Palestinians. And together they will plunder the people to the east, which is the Arab nations to the east toward the Euphrates. They will subdue Edom and Moab, and the Ammonites will be subject to them. So this is the time when we will have peace on earth, not just the Middle East, but peace everywhere, at least for 1,000 years, and then it gets better than that. So.